It's the call of the international break, but we are about to get going for another block of Premier League games. Welcome to Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. Joe, is it true we actually have international players now?
Lots. I think it was the first time ever that there was 3 players in the same international team against England. I think we've had 3 England players before, but we did have Chio Ogbene, Sammy Smodics and Darragh O'Shea all starting for Ireland yesterday in the Nations League against England. Ogbene was the Republic of Ireland man of the match as well.
Oh, okay. Is that damning with faint praise, given my understanding? I must admit, I tuned out of the football this weekend in terms of the internationals, but that can't be bad, can it?
No, it was a bit of a stroll for England, which is good to see under the new manager. But no, we've had lots of players in action. One player who's been in action once but won't be again in this international break is Aro Muric, who has been sent home in disgrace from the Kosovan camp for going out night clubbing between games.
Are you joking?
No.
But lad, I thought it was because he let in that soft goal. I thought it was a bit harsh when I saw he'd been sent home. But no, apparently he's been on the lash when he weren't supposed to be. The boy.
Tread carefully, then, Dave. What's your view on that? Doesn't sound too clever, does it?
My view, no, not really. My view on, sorry, Ben, I missed that. My view on
Mr. Muric.
Oh look, who knows the full?
Breaking a curfew.
We jest, don't we? Yes, it was a curfew break, so we don't know the full ins and outs. Obviously, you see people perhaps putting 2 and 2 together, but no, we don't know the full story. But yeah, as Joe quite rightly said, he has been sent home. With 3 of them got sent home, I think. Joe,
yeah. One of the other players who got sent home, Muric, was sent home from a previous camp for fighting with him. So at least they're back as friends.
I'm still thinking about the bad news, Joe.
Kosovans are, as a people, are pretty out there, and there's always a lot going on in the Kosovan camp.
Oh, okay.
I think they're a fiery bunch. I think it's fair to say, but no, I think, and obviously plenty of chat on our Telegram group about it to see how he'll be received when he arrives back in, back in Ipswich, no doubt at some point earlier than expected this week.
Welcome to the Blue Monday podcast. We are international break, but we can start looking ahead. We've had our first block of Premier League games, another one coming up. We'll have a look at squad depth. We'll get Joe and Dave's kind of takes on, what is essentially coming up and how they're feeling. And then we will do some questions. I can see some questions coming in already, so we'll try and flip to that. We'll be back in our normal process this week. So, Joe, it felt all a little bit kind of frantic, that first block of games, didn't it? With ground improvements and Liverpool, and then you're off to Manchester City. Obviously, the disappointment of the EFL Cup loss, which we managed to beautifully, completely ignore on last week's flagship, which was quite deliberate for those who did mention it. Then the end of the transfer window and all that jazz. Does everything kind of calm down a little bit now and we kind of get into sort of a nice workflow, fingers crossed?
Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? And especially when you look at the fixtures we had at the start of the season, there was 2 games that you were almost certainly going to lose, games where we were like 10-1 to win at home and 30-1 to win away. So it was a very strange start to the season. And so when the fixture list came out, I thought I'd quite like a soft start to the season because we've got this togetherness, this squad, this continuity. It might help us pick some points up early doors, but how it actually worked out probably was best for us because we weren't really ready to get the start of the season. We had a bit of a disrupted pre-season, a lot of players not playing all the way through it, signings not through the door, and it probably worked out in our benefit to have our hardest and maybe like 5th hardest match of the season right at the start, just to get those out the way with 0 points on the board. But no, it's really, really important. We got something from that Fulham game, and we did. And it wasn't just a point; it was a performance well out of that. And we are now, the squad is in place. We'll go through tonight. I think we've got 27 senior guys in the squad now, ready to go. You're 2 for each position, and a couple spare on top of that, and it's now time to get down to business, isn't it?
Dave, Joe makes me feel slightly optimistic when he says that, but do we have to kind of caveat that by saying that'll actually be the same for a lot of clubs, won't it? That they, now settle down. So I don't know if the advantage is that big in terms of actually for us.
I think I can see where Joe's coming from. It was a bit disruptive. The signings didn't come in till fairly, some of the signings didn't come in till fairly late in the day, with the Liverpool game and Man City games coming up. There wasn't really much pressure on us for those games, was it? And look, we acquitted ourselves, let's face it, for an hour, just under against Liverpool, which we've covered before. We acquitted ourselves really well. Kept Man City at bay for, 70 minutes, nigh on 65, 70 minutes, which was perhaps an achievement in itself. And as we said last week, we got the morale boosting point, but probably just as important as the point was the performance and the overall, certainly performance of some of the players we brought in. You could really see what they're about, and you could really see that they're going to hopefully flourish at this level. So, yeah, I mean, it begins now. It begins. Cliche. It began with the Fulham game, but yeah, these next two games. I think again we said last week. I actually saw someone on Sky talking about Lineker. I think actually on one of the BBC podcasts talking about perhaps they'll learn a little bit more of exactly where we are after these next two away games, which coming up in consecutive weekends at Brighton and Southampton.
Joe, I'm going to issue a correction. Somebody asked on the last pod, Ben, when do you think Leicester will get their points deduction? And I very kind of confidently said, these things normally happen in international breaks. There's probably a lot of due process to go. So maybe not this one, maybe 2 international breaks time, but they'll try and get it through before Man City. Joe, I'm afraid we're going to have to park our narrative of we stand a really good chance of finishing above Leicester because they're going to get a -6 or a -7. They ain't getting anything, the lucky buggers, Joe.
Yeah, it's a joke, really, isn't it? Because they've driven a cart and horses through the rules, and by changing their accounting date, effectively, it means that they weren't part of the Premier League for 16 days of their PSR period. So they've said if they were, they would have sold players, and it's just you'd like to think the Premier League will go back on it to do it, because it seems incredible that they've got away with sort of deductions last season in the Championship and deductions this season in the Premier League when they have spent so far over and above what they were allowed to spend, and there's no real punishment for it. And yeah, a shame for us, because you want to, and I know people say, oh, well, we want to finish above them properly. I don't give a toss. I just want to finish above 3 teams, whether that's Man City with a 100-point deduction, whether it's Leicester with 10, and we wouldn't stay up otherwise. I do not care, as long as we can finish 17th or above in the league, by any hook or crook.
Dave, to avoid myself, I've talked about this a lot on the internet and had lots of comments back. So I'm not saying any more on this. And for fear of just banging my head against the wall, part of me just thinks you just got to move on from it now. Park it. Joe's right. Finish above whoever by whatever means, but just complete idiocy.
Yeah, you've got to go on with it. It was, let's face it, it's a big fudge, isn't it? I mean, it'll be interesting to see, the big elephant, the massive, humongous elephant in the room is obviously the Man City, breaking 100, supposedly 115 rules, is it? Look, yeah, we'll see what happens there, but perhaps this gives the Premier League, have they set a precedent? I mean, perhaps Man City's slightly on a different level to Leicester, but have they set a bit of precedent there that also Man City will escape punishment as well? Who knows? I don't know, but I totally amen with Joe. I'd take any points deduction is totally positive for us if it comes along. However we finish above these 3 teams, like Joe said, I really don't care.
Before we get into squad depth and questions, ITFC women 5-0 winners over Lewis at Felixstowe. Lucy O'Brien got the scoring underway from the penalty spot. Macy Barker made it 2-0 before halftime. Angela Addison, Sophie Peskett and Ella Rutherford make the points save in the second half. Town level on points, in top spot with Exeter, but second on goal difference, Dave.
Yeah, can I make a comment about that? I said to my youngest, I was reading sort of Telegram notes and what was going on in match and that this afternoon, and I said to my youngest, "Who's GK Barry? Have we signed someone else or something like that?" She, apparently taking selfies with her and stuff. Is she like an England international that I don't know about? He didn't even know.
I think she's a TikToker, or she's TikTok or Instagram, and she's got a lot of followers, or YouTube. One of the things
right.
that young people do. But her partner is
so old.
Ella Rutherford is her partner.
Actually, right. One of her partners plays.
Yeah,
Oh, there
so
you go.
they're together.
That kind of makes
when
sense.
I saw her, I thought she was
Is
a
Ella
goalkeeper.
Rutherford the cold celebration girl?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Decent as well. She scored.
She's
again
on fire.
today,
Yeah.
Yeah, she scored twice
2
last week, which I think was her debut. And
I've just
again
said she's cold and on fire in the same sense. By the way, about us being old, we have been doing this podcast for 10 years. We were 10 years younger when we started this podcast, in terms of us being old.
Young and foolish, Ben, weren't we? Young and
I
foolish.
don't know about
Some of
that.
us were.
There you go. Right, let's talk about squad depth then and where we're sort of standing. It really is so different to the EFL, guys, isn't it? Where you now look at it and you've had a block of 3 games and big business now. We've got a block of 4 games to get through with Brighton, Southampton, Villa at home, West Ham away. I mean, the fixtures are easier than having Liverpool and Man City, but 3 of them are away from home. Just quickly, David, just give me your feelings about the next block and the geography as well.
I mean, it sounds a bit mad, a bit of that cliche. It's set, on paper it should be easier, but then you say those games, you think, yeah, it's a tough. Of all those games, obviously we've already spoken about it briefly. This Southampton game, which is a game week after next, is a big one. Even at this stage of the season, that's a big one. Look, they're all big, but that one especially, because obviously a fellow promoted team, you want to be taking points from that one. West Ham away, yeah, not easy. Villa at home. Oh, well, again, we spoke about this. That's either, did we say it was slightly before the Bayern Munich game? So yeah, that puts a different perspective on things. And look, let's face it, coming up next week, going Brighton away ain't going to be no walk in the park. Should be quite an attractive game though, I should think. But yeah, it's on paper, yeah, more chance of picking up points there, but yeah, it just don't get any easier, does it? It really doesn't. It brings it home really where we are.
Anything to add, Joe?
Yeah, I was just looking up GK Barry's numbers for you, so you can get
her.
She's got the Saving Grace YouTube channel and podcast, which has got 477,000 followers on YouTube.
That's more than
843,000 on Instagram.
Significantly more than me, yeah.
And 3.6 million on TikTok. So
I mean, she's not Ed Sheeran, but this is more excellent coverage for the club, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Yeah,
yeah,
so just numbers out there.
Yeah,
but back to the fixtures. Yeah, no, it's going to be a real tough month. And like I said, that Southampton game, that must be one with a big red circle in the calendar around it, because that is going to be a game.
And for them, Joe. And for them.
I mean, for both of us, that's a game in our mini league, isn't it, so to speak, of teams at the bottom of the league. And that is one where if we can go there and get the win, that would be such a big result. A real 6-pointer, isn't it? Even at this stage of the season, we know that's going to be a massive, important game.
We just don't want a 0 in the win column after 7, Joe, do we?
No, and it's just incredible, like how many games we've won over the sort of last 2 seasons to be hoping to win one game. One game in like 2 months, you'll be happy almost if you could beat Southampton and pick up a point against Villa or against Brighton. You'd almost be happy with that after 6 games. And who's the other game? West Ham, is it as well, away? No, West Ham at home. I don't know, but
it's away. I think it's away.
Yeah,
West Ham's away. Yeah, three of the 4 away from home. Yeah,
we're playing at home, are we?
Yeah, so we have I think someone put in the comments earlier, we used to have 3-game weeks in the Championship and League One. Now we're getting 3-game months at the moment. So
yeah. I mean, the flip side of obviously having that run is you do then get 5 from the next 8 at Portman Road. So hopefully, I think we've just all got to be very patient. And I mean, we've done that already, Dave, with the essentially facing Klopp's Liverpool and then Guardiola's Man City, right?
Yeah, to be fair. Yeah, we absolutely have. When is it, just out of interest, when is the next international break?
Yeah, so it's after West Ham. So
it's between West Ham and
West Ham and
Everton. I think we've got West Ham and then the break and then Everton at home, isn't it?
Everton, Brentford, Leicester. So yeah, maybe we'll. Well, I hope there's a win in the column. And although I'm going to go back to Joe's comment, if there's no win in the column and we're above position number 18, fine, move on, keep things rolling, take a point, as David Diamond would say. Right, let's get into this squad depth. So Richard's done as the graphics. We are live on YouTube each and every Sunday. If you're listening on audio and can't see what's about to go up on the screen. We still love you, but do think about coming and joining us each and every Sunday. If you are here, please hit the thumbs up button. Make sure you've subscribed. We're closing in on a significant milestone on YouTube. Not quite those TikTok numbers, but, we are who we are, Joe. And get your questions in for later. Goalkeeping position here, Joe, is fairly well nailed down, even with any infractions on cost of an international duty. Walton, Slicker, Muric, quick thought on that, Joe?
Yeah, it's what we expected to be, wasn't it? Once Hladky left, we sort of thought we'd get one in, and there might be Slicker out on loan and somebody else coming in that way. But apparently that was agreed quite early on in the summer that Slicker was going to be here for the season, being in and around it, so to speak, as a number 3. But yeah, Muric, he's probably, out of the signings, he's probably the one that's probably started the worst out of it, and missed the first game with injury. Obviously, Man City had a howler, really. Not a good game there. And then in the third game, there were still a few moments against Fulham where he looked a little bit dodgy towards the end.
Looked nervous, Joe.
Yeah, looked nervous, and he's now gone away and had an issue on international duty. Like I say, you just really need to get him. It might, in the long term, be a benefit that he probably won't be in the squad for the October internationals at Kosovo, and maybe gives him a break to do some more work here at the club and move on with it. Yeah, but like I say, we have got a lot of eggs in his basket this season, because as good a goalkeeper as Christian Walton is, he's not the type where we play out from the back, which we need, like Vaz was last year. So I don't know. It does feel like that's probably a position which is sort of teetering on a bit of a nice edge. That one, that if Muric doesn't sort it out, then we are severely weakened.
What do you need to see from Muric in the next block of 4, Dave?
Yeah, I think some consistency, really. I mean, as I think you nailed it. I think he looked slightly nervous, I thought, against Fulham. But yeah, just consistency. I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, starts with a clean sheet away at Brighton. I mean, just imagine go to Brighton, get a clean sheet, he makes some good saves, and then you're off and running, really, aren't you? So I think he needs that kind of game, really.
Yeah, agreed. Right back, Dave. Ben Johnson, Harry Clark, Axel Tuanzebe, and a lot of people predicted Tuanzebe. I'd be interested in your take as to how that plays through the season. And we've very much identified this as being kind of the pivot position of whatever the team's formation is going to be as well, in terms of, is that guy going to run forward or is that guy going to tuck in? And we've got players that can do both. But looks like it's Axel Tuanzebe's shirt to lose, Dave.
I think he's done well. I think certainly defensively, I think he's done well so far in the 3 games. I don't think he certainly didn't disgrace himself. I don't think against Doku in the City game either. So I think he's done fairly well. I think Joe mentioned last week that perhaps he's not got all the tools going forward. Perhaps as a Harry Clark may well have, but I think up to now, I think he's done absolutely fine.
Joe,
and a player with a bit like Ben Johnson, a player with Premier experience as well. But I think he's done well.
Yeah, no, it's a funny position, isn't it? Because we've obviously brought Ben Johnson in on a long-term contract, and again, like Muric, he's probably one that hasn't started brilliantly. Really, sort of been shunted around from positions, hasn't really made a good impact when he came on against Liverpool and against Man City. I thought he struggled quite badly at times in that game there, but in an unfamiliar role. And we've got Tuanzebe is on like the shortest deal, but he looks like the guy with the shirt at the moment. And it's like, do you try and lengthen that contract, or is it in Axel's interest maybe to let that play out for a bit longer? I don't know, but he looks, I think he's
mechanisms in that contract being he was a free agent that work in our favour, Joe, mustn't we?
Well, it was a 1+1, so we've already taken the option.
So we've taken that, yeah.
So we've used the option up. So there's nothing further for this deal to run into. So yeah, quite an interesting situation that could end up being sort of over the course of the season if he does keep up his form the way he started the season. And then we've obviously got Harry Clark to come back in. So you've almost. You got 3 for 1 position here, which is
great.
Yeah, it's great in some ways, but it's also going to be hard to keep them all involved and happy. And there might need to be some. I don't know. You might need to see one of those go out at some point. But
we did see Dave Johnson come on and be a little bit further forward in terms of, and that's kind of a nice screening thing that you can be able to do, isn't it?
No, absolutely. You can go to that.
But we signed off Bene for that though as well, haven't we? So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's
yes, yeah. I mean, obviously you'd have Johnson as certainly more defensive than Ogbene. So horses for courses, really. I think there.
Left back, there's not really a lot to mention there. That Leif Davis will play every minute unless he can be wrapped in cotton wool, and Connor Townsend's kind of ready to go. I don't really think we need to discuss that. What will be interesting here are these centre back positions where we have Jacob Greaves, who's sort of started pretty well in terms of all the signings. Maybe kind of stood out the most. I know he's had a fair bit of defending to do in the first game, and sometimes that can skew your perception when you have a lot to do. But he's done it excellently. Cameron Burgess is the kind of other option on the left side. And then we have Dara O'Shea, who's come in probably for a decent bit of money. George Edmondson heavily linked away. And
he has gone to Middlesbrough, hasn't he?
Oh, he's gone now. Beg your pardon. And Luke Wolfenden, who was pretty good against Fulham, wasn't he, Joe? So where are you sort of standing on this?
Well, at the moment, Greaves is your number one on the left-hand side with Burgess as his backup. Nice balance there. You need two left footers there. And for me, I think Wolfie probably stays in the team ahead of O'Shea at the moment. I don't think you can just swap them over just because O'Shea's a big signing. I'm sure at some point that will happen over the season. But ultimately, we needed some more depth in there. George Edmondson wasn't seen as good enough to be that backup in there. So you can't sign just a cheap player. Like, I know we did sort of kind of Townsend on the left to back up Leif Davis, but effectively Leif Davis is injured, we're in big trouble because he's such an important player to the way we play. But it's very difficult to sign just a backup centre back, isn't it? Like you almost have to sign somebody at least of the same level as Luke Wolfenden, if not a higher level, and then those two are going to have to fight it out for their position. And at the moment, I think Wolfie's done enough to keep his position at the moment, and we'll see how it goes from there.
There's still the three centre back wrinkle where you've got O'Shea and then Dave Clark and Tuan Zabi come into the conversation as a
certainly Twanzebe. I agree with it, Joe. I thought Wolfenden was very, very good, wasn't he, against Fulham? Really, really good. So, yeah, I mean, you're not going to pay, what was it, 8.5, 9 million for a centre back.
I think it's about 12.
12, was he more? Even more? Crikey! So, yeah, honestly, you're not going to pay. You're not going to pay that much for a centre back and kind of not play him long term. But as a bit like Twanzebe, Wolfenden really well against Fulham. He's got possession of the shirt now, so I fully expect him to start at the weekend alongside Greaves.
Sorry, we just have these moments on the podcast where Joe just chucks that in 12 million, and that's just another signing at the end of the window. That would have been the biggest story for the first 9 years of the podcast. But there you go. We're going to talk about central midfield, but first, let me just talk about a central midfielder in the Ipswich Town team, and that is Calvin Effin Phillips. And our friends at Football Prizes are giving away a beautiful Calvin Effin Phillips signed Ipswich Town boot display. So if you head over to footballprizes.co.uk, it's £3.95. It's basically a raffle, but there are lots of bonus prizes, including Ali Al-Hamadi signed shirt and a Luke Wolfenden signed shirt as well. I checked before we came on air, guys. This ends tomorrow night as we're recording. There are 96 tickets left to purchase. So head over to footballprizes.co.uk, and I might have a little go myself, actually, because you know my thoughts on Calvin Effin Phillips, Dave.
Do you know what? I reckon that'd be worth double if he actually signed it, Calvin Effin Phillips.
There you
imagine.
Go. Thank you to the people at Football Prizes for a little team up at the start of the season. But Joe, let's go to central midfield where we can talk about the 4-3-3 possible shape. There is Calvin Effin Phillips, Mas Luongo, Jack Taylor, and then Morsi and Kayuste. Your thoughts? This is a difficult one, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the Fulham game probably showed where we want to be long term with that, because Phillips had played against Wimbledon in midweek, done okay, nothing really to write home about, but it looked like he was just getting some minutes into his legs. And for the Fulham game, it sort of seemed like your two options were: do you go with Mas Luongo? Him and Morsey are probably the best fit at the moment because they know each other's games so well, but we know Phillips longer term is going to be the guy that steps in ahead of Massimo. And he did just go with Phillips and Morsey in there, so that does make you think that's what he wants to do long term. Kayusto, I'm sure, will play a lot of minutes over the season as well. But I think Mass, his time, whilst not up, I think if we see him starting more games this season, something's probably gone wrong, because he's got this year and he's earned it with his performance over the last 18 months, but he's not really good enough for the Premier League at this stage of his career. He's going into it sort of like, I know he's not. I know Sam Morsey's a similar age to him, so it's not a case of age, but I think this is just his swan song really in England here. I can't see that he's going to be playing a huge amount of football, but he's going to be important through the cups, around the camp, the cup, one cup's gone. In the cup, around the camp, picking up a few minutes when Morsey inevitably is suspended or Phillips is injured or one of those situations. So he'll do well for us in there. But yeah, it does feel like it's going to be Morsey and Phillips in there with Kayusta as the backup. Jack Taylor's sort of in a funny position because he's not really sort of found what he needs to at Ipswich so far, and you wonder whether he ends up maybe in the rotation above them in the sort of one of the 10 roles, or we change things slightly there. But I'd like to say just a special note for Sam Morsey, who has been exceptional already this season. He's just stepped up. He looks like he's played in the Premier League for the last 10 seasons, and I expected him to step up because of just how he's been over the last couple of years. But it's great to see him actually doing it, and I can't see anyone managing to get that shirt off him over the course of this year.
Dave, when people have been kind of trying to ruin my hope and having a go at my football team to me on Twitter, they've been saying, "Oh, what about the players that got you there?" And I do think it's important for the lineage of the last 2 years to keep Luongo around in that, like, Richard Keogh, Sone Aluko, type role in there. What are your thoughts on what Joe said about central midfield? And again, I'm sorry, you got the same question last time. The possibility of sticking 3 of them in, particularly in the last 30 minutes of games.
Yeah, potentially, but a fully functional and flying Calvin Phillips and Sam Morsey is a formidable centre midfield. It really, really is. As someone just said in the comments there, Kajuste, really like the look of him in his sort of brief cameo. Again, Wimbledon, think just getting minutes in his legs, but when he came on against Fulham, I thought he looked the part. I really did. As Steve just said there. So I think it's important that we keep a lot of these, if we can. He's not going to be a starter. He just isn't, Massimo. And I think you're right. It's important that we keep the nucleus of that, the squads that have got us up the last 2 years around, around the squad, around the match day squad as well. So we've said it's crept in recent seasons, isn't it? Some of these players that were starters will now be finishers.
Let's have a look. Should we look at this now? Let's just look at the wide players here. So Wes Burns annoyingly got hurt in the first game, and then Ogbene arrived not long afterwards, if I've got my timeline correct there. And down the left, Nathan Broadhead, Jack Clark, and Marcus Harness. Davis.
Harness is gone, obviously.
Oh, of course, yeah, beg your pardon. Is Jack Clark now taking that shirt forevermore, Dave?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Again, a nice little cameo against Fulham. So yeah, I think that's an absolute superb signing, that one. I really did. I really did not really see that one coming, but that was a great signing. So yeah, I think so. Wide left. I mean, again, and which is a shame for Nathan Broadhead, who's been absolutely superb for us these last couple of seasons, but he is fragile, isn't he? Unfortunately, he is picking up these injuries, and these are long-termish injuries as well, aren't they? So again, you're going to see, I think, throughout the season, you're going to see Nathan Broadhead as more of a finisher, I think.
What about Sammy Smolix as well? He's obviously played that left-sided role for the last.
And he got to
he
it.
Started the last 2 games there, hasn't he? So
I love that. Yeah, I mean, again, he's in possession of the shirt, so again, you'd expect him to take up that role against Brian. I just love the guy's work ethic and attitude and everything. I think it's been a while since Ipswich have had a sort of edgy sort of player like that, I think. So yeah,
Joe Garner.
There you go. Well, similar. A bit like Twanzebe, he's in possession, and Wolford is in possession of the shirt, and it's up to sort of Clark, someone to take it from him. I see, but again, you can see Clark starting there with Smolix wide left on Saturday, and you can see at 65 minutes Clark coming on.
Joe, you can talk about the wide guys, but I guess Amari Hutchinson, given fees and history from last season, is the guy. With Connor Chaplin, maybe the finisher. It is really good, the depth in the three positions off the front, isn't it? Really good.
Yeah, it is. And Hutchinson is going to be the main man, isn't he, this year? In that sort of right side of 10 role, I think McKenna likes a left footer playing in that role. So it's sort of Hutchinson and Chaplin. But in the last two games, Connor Chaplin's come on in like the 88th minute in the sort of Man City and the Fulham game. So it does feel like for the guy who's probably been, could easily say, sort of alongside Sam Morsey, our best player for the last two seasons, is almost sort of just getting 2 or 3 minutes here and there. And I'm sure his time will come, and I'm sure he'll make some important contributions this season. But I guess that's just the reality of him.
Joe, does the physicality of the Premier League work against someone of Chaplin's? I don't want to be incredibly heightist here, but you know what I'm saying, don't you?
Diminutive.
I don't think it's height, because I don't think Amari Hutchinson's much bigger. It's just that Premier League athleticism and physicality. And I know I've listened to an interview with Connor Chaplin before, and he was sort of saying how hard he has to work on his fitness. Like in international breaks, he is having to just keep going and keep going. And we know when we were in League One, we were a very fit team. And I think McKenna, there was a comment like in between the League One and Championship season saying, look, we've looked at where the numbers are for the Championship, and whilst we're the fittest team in League One, we'd be like the second least fit team in the Championship. So the programme was set to get them to be the fittest team in the Championship. And I imagine the same's happened between the Championship and the Premier League. So these guys are on mega schedules to try and get themselves there. And some of them just aren't going to have the athletic capability to hit the numbers they need to hit. And it might be that this might be why we've had a couple of extra injuries in pre-season, because they haven't been able to work their body to the capacity required. Connor Chaplin might be one that just isn't able to hit the numbers he needs to hit to be an effective presser for the 60 minutes of a game, and might only be able to last the sort of 20, 25 minutes at the end of the game. But we know how good Colin Chaplin is, and we know he will be good for us this season. But it is sad. He's probably the biggest name casualty so far of players that dropped out of the team, because we've obviously seen Cameron Burgess drop out of the team, who's been fantastic for us. Massimo Luongo dropping out of the team, but I think Connor Chaplin, he's been sort of front and centre of everything we've done for the last 2 years. Everyone's
going to think this is a gimmick here, but great news from Ryan in the chat, who has just won the Luke Wolfenden shirt over on Football Prizes.
Wow.
.com. We've already done the read, but yeah, just the Ali Al Hamadi shirt left in there. But go and get involved over at footballprizes.co.uk for your Calvin effing Phillips signed framed boot. Dave, we think George Hurst is going to be back reasonably soon. Liam Delap, I know Joe kind of fancies him kind of down the right-hand side ultimately, but
I've given up on that.
No, you haven't. As soon as he's fit, you're going to be back on.
Again, that's an interesting
go ahead, Dave.
After his performance against Fulham, I thought he was absolutely superb, and he's got that physicality about him, hasn't he? And he's got an edge to him as well. I think we've seen that Delap as well. It's going to be interesting. Again, a nice problem to have when George Hurst does come back, because George Hurst has been so integral.
Kieran McKenna bloody loves George Hurst.
Oh no, he will. Yeah, he'll find a way. He will find a way. Yeah, he's been so integral to us, hasn't he? And certainly, I think those first two games, to put a Man City one to one side, Christ's sake. But certainly, I think the Liverpool game, I think we did miss him, certainly. And you do. He's been absolute quality for us. But Liam Delap he's really, really exciting me, and we could have got an absolute. Joe, hang on, quote me. What was Liam Delap, Joe?
15.
There you go.
But Joe, talk about Premier League physicality. If you can get both those two on the pitch, Hurst and Delap, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Like we know, obviously, George Hurst has been a fantastic player for us over the last sort of 18 months. But we know that when he's fit and Liam Delap's fit, they're both going to play in every game. It's not a case that Liam Delap's going to be the striker, and like Erling Haaland, he's going to play every minute, and you might make a sub for the last 2 minutes here and there. The job of the number 9 is to run yourself into the ground for 60, 65 minutes and then get replaced and somebody else come on. So when George Hurst is fit, whether he's starting or coming off the bench, both him and Delap will be playing every single week. So it's not really a case of who's first choice, who's second, because they're both going to be such important and integral players in the way we play.
Ben, 4-4 F in 2. I can see it. 4-4 F in 2.
No, effing has been pegged for Calvin Phillips.
Calvin.
Nowadays.
Calvin's
Yeah,
going. Sorry.
we can't have too many
No, we can't.
effing references. Keep getting your takes on the squad depth in the chat. We will go to some questions now. There's a few coming already that are way up the live chat over here on YouTube on the Blue Monday podcast. So if you feel like copying and pasting and putting them in, we'll go to questions, stick a Q before them and a question mark afterwards. Get your comments in on what the lads have said about squad depth as well, as we hear from our partners at Atwell's.
Blue Monday is proudly brought to you in partnership with our friends at Atwell Solicitors, your ideal legal partner for work on property or business law. Their client care has repeatedly been recognised as outstanding, and they are people-focused with a plain English approach which sets them apart. They have offices in Ipswich, Colchester and London, and to find out more, head to atwells.com.
Thank you to the wonderful people at Atwells. We won't be doing a Premier League roundup today, but big shout out to Innovation Labs, who are our partners with that. We will be back to normal this week. Mikey and myself will be doing. Oh, Mikey did really well on the predictions last week. It's galling. It's annoying, but we'll be back with those on Wednesday with me.
As Roy Keane would say, it's his job.
Yeah, but I don't like losing every week. I don't mind losing like every
job.
2 in every 3, but yeah, it's boring, isn't it? And Rich and Seb will be along for the Brighton pre-match on Thursday, and I do believe my spies tell me that Dave and Craig are working on some more Blue Monday Rewind shows coming up. Get your questions in via the chat. Trevor says, Joe, anyone know the extent of Hutchinson injury?
If people weren't aware, Hutchinson was named in the
Sorry to interrupt, Joe. Gord asked the same question as well.
Yeah, Hutchinson was in the England on-21 squad, and then when they reported, he was one of 3 or 4 players that headed back to their club. So, but from what I've been told, there was nothing really major in it. It was just maybe not quite right. Maybe would have been better off with a break. And it's not that uncommon for players to drop out these squads at this stage of the season because they are still working into the season at this stage. It's not a case that the season starts on day one, you are ready. I think we can all remember Amari missed quite a bit of time in pre-season getting up to speed. We signed him and then he didn't play in like the first maybe 3 or 4 pre-season games because he was still having to get up to speed. So I imagine he's just probably at an earlier stage of his journey to full fitness than others. So it was just seen as best to give him that 2-week break.
Stevie, Dave asked which drug we should be going for in January. Dave, what do you like as a January edition? Do you like somebody coming up from maybe a division below or another league who's knocking the goals in? Do you like going back to somebody, who I'm referring to, who maybe hasn't moved in August? Do you like trying to get someone from the same division, although it's very, very hard in the Premier League? Because it seems fairly obvious we will be going back for some kind of striker signing in January.
Yeah, do we see perhaps another transfer record being beaten? Our Greek friend, did I see he scored 2 yesterday, Joe? Did I see that?
Yeah, against Finland, he scored twice.
He scored twice against Finland. So, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we didn't go back for someone like him.
We'll get the Latte Lath links. I assume he'll have 12 goals by then as well, won't he? Or something.
But we do know that we like to go back in for the same targets from previous windows.
Good point.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, good point.
Nice.
Speaking of good points, I think this is a good point from Andrew. How much does a relative lack of travelling needed for the next few games help us? I think it does, doesn't it? Joe, can't do any harm whatsoever.
Yeah, it does help, but it's not as bad as when you're in the Championship and you might have a game on like the Wednesday night away in the Northwest, and then you've got a game on a Saturday. It's very different today. It's one game a week, and one of the things Kieran McKenna did speak about when we lost to Wimbledon in the League Cup, in the EFL Cup, is that game would have fallen in the midweek between Brighton away and Southampton away. So if you'd have chucked in another away trip in that could have really hurt us. I know Wimbledon drew Newcastle at home, I think, but if we'd have drawn, for example, Newcastle away, and you've got like I say, you got Brighton on the Saturday, then Sunday, Monday, you're travelling up to Newcastle, playing them on a Tuesday, coming back down, losing the whole of Wednesday, Thursday, and then you're just really disrupting your week. So yeah, that's probably the big benefit of that game not being there.
David, Michael asks, are we changing our system? Noted that Delap's sat deeper in the press with Hutchinson and Smodics pushing forward. It's difficult, Dave, isn't it, now? I think we're probably 4 or 5 years into the fact that there are no systems really anymore because you play so many during the game, especially with one as intelligent as McKenna. Dave, I think, to Michael's point, there's going to be more of this. I think I'm doing it for a reason. I think you're going to see a 3-5-2 shape more. I think you're going to see a 4-3-3 shape as well at various points in games. So I would say most definitely, Dave.
Because as we quite said, it is very fluid, and you have got the depth of squad. You have got the depth of squad to do it now. So yeah, quite agree.
Let's stay with you, Dave. Norman, when do you think we will hear announcements about contract extensions for some of our key players? Davis in particular. They have got form for doing it shortly after. Am I misremembering that? After windows have closed and whatnot, they've often gone in and there's been announcements. Am I misremembering that?
No, I don't think particularly you are. I mean, you think Davis, and he said Davis in particular, you'd want that to be, you'd really want that to be done and dusted sooner rather than later, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I just think at the moment you just, like, if you're Leif Davis' agent, why would you sign anything at this stage?
Yeah,
you're going to push it out into the season to try and get a better deal, aren't you?
Of course you are. And if he continues to play at the level, certainly he was against Fulham last week, then yeah.
Because you're talking like Leif, his next contract is going to be a 5-year contract on 50 grand a week. So it's a massive contract.
And who's to say, might be an England squad player by then.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes, please.
And we've got a year's option on him, so that's not as. I think it's only Axel Tuanzebe who is out of contract next summer, who's a regular.
Joe Asher on Twitter. How do we get Kayusta into the team? Because he looks sublime versus Fulham.
Well, Sam Morsey's on 2 yellows after 3 games. It might be that he might find it harder to walk the tightrope in the Premier League than he did in Championship and League One.
Wonderful. Any more? I think we're good there. Let me just bring up the embryonic, as I'm supposed to say, Premier League table. I just want your take on how you're feeling about a potential kind of relegation battle now. Looking at that bottom 6 there, Dave, forgive me, all the people on YouTube, let me just press plus on there. We'll make that a little bit bigger. I don't think we really need to see the top 5 here on the Blue Monday podcast, do we? Dave, we've got Everton and Southampton on 0 points. I'd have one of them far more likely than the other to stay in and around the 0 points mark. And then we've got 4 teams, including us, all tied on 1. Wolves, Palace and Leicester. I think what I'm asking you, Dave, is Manchester United's next team. Incredible. Are the likes of Palace, Wolves and Everton honestly going to hang around? I know somebody has to be in the bottom 5. That's how a league table works, but it's difficult to see, isn't it?
Ben, you would think Everton this season, surely they can't keep dodging that bullet season after season. So, yeah, big club. I see Everton, I really do. Palace, we know we've got it. I mean, Palace, I don't expect Palace. You would expect to pick up, and I fully expect Palace to be certainly finish mid-table or better. Wolves is an interesting one. They lost players, not really totally sure of their recruitment, haven't really been following them closely. But yeah, I mean, this might be the season that Wolves perhaps also struggle. So yeah, out of those teams that are down there now, certainly on a point or just above, I certainly see Palace moving out of there.
And I think unhelpfully, Joe, as well, with Brentford, Bournemouth and Forest in 6th, 8th and 9th, there'll be some kind of regression to the mean.
Yeah.
But you look at who Forest have played, and what they beat Southampton, didn't they? 1-0. And so
drew with
Bournemouth and drew with Wolves. So they're not exactly a tough set of fixtures they've had to begin the season. So that 5 points is very different to our point effectively there. If we'd have had 5 points in those first 3 games, people would be thinking, bloody hell, what's going on here? But you could probably argue that drawing at home to Wolves in that run is not a good result for them, and beating Southampton is what you've got to do.
Right. I think Stevie here in the chat has preempted our last item on the running order here. Realistically, how many points from 4 games is a good return? We do our predictions here.
The next 4.
A lot. Yeah. So Brighton away, Southampton away, Villa at home, West Ham away. I mean, is it even a points total, Dave? Although I'm sure you'd be happy with drawing all 4 of them, but surely it's just getting the first. If it was 3 points and you got the first win, is that not enough, or do you need it to be a point per game?
Yeah, I think 4, and I think 4 could well be achievable in those games. So 4 would be, I think 4 would be a really good return. It really would be. Anything, look, but you're right. As long as we put our first W on the board somewhere along the line, then great. But I think 4 would be good.
Yeah, I think 4 is about par. You've got to get at least 3, don't you? In that 4-game run, I think you'd want to get 4 or 5, maybe even is where you want to get 5 or 6, isn't it? Is what you want to out of that, but 4 is what you probably take now.
Joe's only got 5 or 6. Yeah,
maybe 12, maybe 12.
7, maybe 8. That's 12.
There you go. Right, well, we will get back far more into this with the prediction show, like I said, on Wednesday. And the preview show, check that out on Thursday night as well. I think we can probably wrap up there, guys, can't we? Given we are in international break mode, really, really greatly appreciate all of your questions. And yeah, safe travels if you're headed to Brighton at the weekend. Last word from you, Dave.
Hopefully a good performance and some sort of a positive result down at the seaside on Saturday.
The last word from you, Joe.
Yeah, obviously Brighton's going to be a tough game, and we could have started the season with our first 4 games. We could have played first, second, and third in the league in our first 4 games with Man City, Liverpool, and Brighton with the way they've started. But like I say, they've got a lot of players on international duty in far-flung corners of the world, so maybe you hope that helps us. But yeah, we know that's another brutally tough game we've got.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to end on an optimistic there, but yeah, it is going to be brutally tough, and that is a kind of the narrative all season, isn't it? Thank you for joining us today, Blue Monday and Ipswich Town podcast, and we will be back on Wednesday with the Premier League predictions.